In March 2016, we took a cruise from Bali to Japan. The first stop on the cruise was at Komodo Island, home to Komodo dragons. Unfortunately, my video camera kept going wrong, so I have no video of Bali and not much from some of our other ports of call. I'm afraid this video isn't up to my usual standard. I was a bit disappointed with Komodo Island. The dragons are interesting, if ugly, but the setting is more like a zoo than seeing them in the wild. We had a look around the local village, and then some snorkeling, before moving on to Sandakan on the northeast coast of Borneo. We visited 3 wildlife sanctuaries here, the first being the orangutans at Sepilok, where the animals are free to come and go, but tend to turn up at feeding times. Next was the Proboscis Monkey Centre, which was the most interesting of the 3 places. The Proboscis Monkey Sanctuary was also home to a large tame hornbill. And finally, very shy sun bears. Puerto Princesa is a small port in the south of the Philippines, where we were greeted with much fanfare by this local band. We just walked around the town and visited the cathedral. In Manila, we looked around the old town, admired these bamboo-framed bicycles, and were grateful not to have to use the local public transport, these jeepneys. Next stop, Taiwan, and a rather wet day visiting the wonderful scenery in the Taroko Gorge. Most of our excursions on this trip were small groups with private guides that I had organised in advance. They worked out much better than the cruise company excursions, which have much larger groups and are a lot more expensive. From Taiwan, we continued north to Okinawa, one of the southernmost Japanese islands. We used the monorail to visit Shuri Castle, and then wandered around the shops, without having much of a clue what most of them were selling. The cruise part of our holiday finished in Osaka, where we docked next to a huge Ferris wheel. Because most Japanese aren't able to keep pets, the shopping centres include areas where you can pay to interact with a range of animals. Mainly cats here, but also dogs and, most bizarrely, pigs. While the ship remained at Osaka, we took a day tour of Kyoto, the ancient capital of Japan, with lots of very well preserved old buildings and gardens. We found Japan fascinating and surprisingly straightforward to get around. Eating out was hard work, mainly because of the lack of any recognisable writing outside restaurants. But apart from eating out, we had no real problems. This is the geisha district in Kyoto, There were lots of women in kimonos, but our guide explained that these were mostly Chinese tourists who hire the costumes. The temples and castles we visited in Kyoto were busy, but not unpleasantly so. The insides of the castles are very different to British stately homes, with almost no furniture and no pictures of people, just bare rooms with some pictures of birds and animals. You can't go more than 100 metres in a city in Japan without coming across vending machines, supplying a large range of foods and drinks. We then left the cruise ship and took a bullet train north to Tokyo, where we spent a couple of days exploring on our own. On our first morning in Tokyo, we took a boat up the river to the Sensoji Temple, where there were crowds waiting to see a dragon dance. A long walk then took us via some much smaller temples to Ueno Park and its boating lake. And then a big shopping area with hundreds of people playing pachinko, rather like slot machines. Our final day was very wet, but we visited the Imperial Palace and Gardens, and in the evening went up the Tokyo Tower for some great views. This trip took us to several very interesting places, and we particularly enjoyed our short time in Japan.